Welcome to another episode of the Watchdog. This week we have a special one for you. This week we will be dealing with a once-in-a-lifetime struggle for press freedom. As many of you know, Mint Press has been subject to different algorithmic suppression on different platforms. It's had its PayPal closed, but of course the precedent was the closing of Wikileaks PayPal around 10 years ago. The most famous political prisoner in the world today is without a doubt Julian Assange, and the British government has worked lock in step with the US government to pursue this terrible policy of extradition with the hope of giving him 175 years in a supermax prison in the United States. We are joined this week by anti-war activist in his own right and father of Julian Assange, John Shipton. Thank you for joining us, John. How are you today?
Well, thank you, Kareem. It's a real pleasure. I believe that we'll meet again in a few days.
Absolutely, and we will talk about that. I will be at the screening in Finsbury Park for the new film that you and your family have put together about your struggle for not only Julian's freedom, but all of ours. Can you tell us a bit about the film, please, John?
It's titled Ithaca. It sort of came about as the usual process was to document, meetings and all that sort of thing, so that you would have some record. And then Gabriel, Julian's brother, took over and began the process of assembling it into a film. This was sort of stimulated by Gabriel's visit to Julian in 2019. At that stage, Julian was housed in the health wing, which the prisoners called the hell wing, because you're completely isolated and you're not in association. Julian was in a very bad way. Gabriel thought that he would never see Julian again alive. So he embarked upon what he does best, as he's a film producer, is to produce a film about the fight to bring about Julian's freedom. Yeah.
Brilliant. And as you alluded to there, Julian has enjoyed significant support from the inmates within Belmarsh. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how that sort of flies in the face of this massive campaign to dehumanize, to demonize, to basically unperson Julian Assange that we've seen across the last 10 years or more?
Well, that was interesting because there are many NGOs that have part of their conditions or their responsibilities to ensure that people falsely imprisoned or falsely accused or hounded, that's part of their responsibility. However, Julian in the health wing was moved from the health wing into what prisoners called association by 3 petitions from the prisoners to the prison governor. Now, this indicates that within the prison, those prisoners have a clear understanding of the circumstances of Julian and the involvement of the state instruments, for example, law, what you call the Crown Prosecuting Service. If I could just add quickly to that answer, there are 4 states that have been involved in the persecution of Julian. Gigantic. The biggest in the world, the most powerful, the United States. One of the maybe second or third tier power, the United Kingdom. Another third tier power, Sweden, and Australia acquiescing to this persecution. It's just a gargantuan monstrosity of false accusation, persecution, torture, and abrogation of human rights. due process with procedural irregularities thrown in. One in particular, really interesting, was that the Crown Prosecuting Service of the United Kingdom and the Swedish Prosecuting Authority embarked upon conspiring to keep Julian in the embassy, counter to what the executives of both of those governments, or the politicians if you want, counter to their utterances over that 7-year period where they simply said, oh, he can walk out any time. Their Crown Prosecuting Service and the Swedish Prosecuting Authority conspiring, it's documented. We don't present our own opinion on this. Their documents document they're conspiring to keep Julian in that embassy.
Yeah. And would you also be able, John, to contrast that campaign that these four governments have led against Julian to not only different governments around the world, for example, the Australian leadership following the recent election, and other major figures in the world, political leaders, their solidarity with Julian and their clarity about what exactly is happening to him and the stakes of this entire affair. Could you tell us a bit about the support Julian has enjoyed?
Yes. Look, everybody likes to see in difficult circumstances a display of courage. So we have the president of Mexico, which is not a second or third tier power, stating clearly that Julian Assange would be on the agenda in his discussion with Biden, and trolling the Americans by saying that should Julian be extradited to the United States best pack up the Statue of Liberty and send it back to France, as there's no liberty available in the United States. So he is the last, but not the foremost. We have in Australia 31 and now about 50 parliamentarians in the cross-party group. Now that's an official French group in the Australian Parliament. The Prime Minister has stated in caucus, is a left-wing politician, or Social Democrat Party, that enough's enough, and he couldn't see the purpose of continuing this prosecution. That's Australia. Every single European parliament has an Assange friendship group in it. Sometimes in the latest vote in Germany on a petition sent to the petitions committee in the Bundestag, there were 90. Now, that's an important petition because it goes on the United States friendship group with Germany as an agenda item. So it must be addressed by both the United States and Germany. The French National Assembly, this is really interesting. The French National Assembly, as a matter of honour, debated whether to give Julian asylum in their National Assembly for 1 hour. That's the first National Assembly to make Julian Assange a matter of parliamentary policy in debate in a National Assembly. Very important. The Council of Europe has made 2 declarations, the latest one a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, being very, very firm that Julian Assange is a protected publisher, journalist, and must be free. The Austrian government's made a parallel statement. The Dunya, the High Commissioner for Human Rights of the Council of Europe, made a parallel statement as well. I'll just repeat it. Every single parliament in the European Union, the European Council of what is it called? Council of Europe. Every single one of them have an Assange friendship group. The latest addition being Luxembourg, which is a small addition, but now everyone has it. Very important. So on the 10th of October, on the 8th of October, all of the supporters of Julian Assange, I hope you and I will be there, will surround Parliament in a ring of hands. Well, that imagery of the supporters surrounding Parliament is equalled by the parliaments of Europe surrounding Parliament in a ring of support for Julian Assange. In the UK Parliament itself, there are 23 in the cross-party group. So that's a brief description of the strength. I'll just add one more thing. 26 of the major NGOs, Human Rights Watch, Asylum International, etc., 26 major NGOs have signed a letter of support for Julian, which has been sent to President Biden. So as you can see, these elements of institutions, parliaments and NGOs and governments represent an upwelling tide of support. They don't do it out of their own motivation. They do it because they either feel the injustice from the upwelling tide of support or realise as parliamentarians that their position is to carry this forward into the institutions of Parliament and resolve the situation.
Thanks, John. And I also understand that the 23 member cross-party group that has representation from all of the parties in British Parliament have attempted to meet with Julian, but Belmarsh seemingly have not been massively cooperative. What's the latest situation with that attempted meeting of the cross-party group in this country, Julian?
John McDonnell managed to get in and visit Julian, and he's in the cross-party group. I think he was Shadow Chancellor in the Jeremy Corbyn opposition. Jeremy Corbyn has made an application to visit Julian in Belmarsh prison. We'll see how that goes. Generally speaking, the administration of the prison and the Crown Prosecuting Service have done their utmost to keep Julian incommunicado. So he's, of course, can't see anybody from the press or anybody to make public statements in Belmarsh Maximum Security Prison. Equal to that is in the hearing last year, back in August, September, Julian stood up to say something in this glass box at the back of the courtroom. Julian stood up to say something. The judge ordered Julian to sit down, and that if he continued speaking, he would be taken to the cells below the courtroom and held there while the hearing continued. There was an application made to move Julian out of the glass box into the well of the court, similarly to every other prisoner and similarly to the prosecutor with its American advisors there. This was refused by the judge in a bureaucratic obfuscation, which she said, "Oh, that's not my responsibility, the court. That's the responsibility of the jail because Julian's in the glass box." So as you can see, adding insult of fabulation and bureaucratic, what do you call it? Bureaucratic skullduggery, I suppose, if you want. Bureaucratic obstruction, I think I mean.
Yeah. And John, I saw it said in an interview with Gabriel, Julian's brother, in which he said that Julian has effectively not seen a blade of grass in 12 years. We understand this process has been torturous for him and, of course, the family too. But we also saw reports of Julian suffering a mini stroke towards the end of last year. If you could just let us know, how is Julian's health situation now?
Well, not the best. So Nils Melzer in 2019 visited Julian in the prison with two experts, doctors, who are expert on diagnosing the effects of psychological torture and what are the results in the body. And they concluded that Julian had been psychologically tortured over a period of 7 years, and that it was reflected in his physiology. That report was submitted to the United Kingdom government and the Swedish government. The United Kingdom government declined to act upon it. That is, the United Kingdom government declined to act upon an officer of the United Nations appointed by the United Nations with the agreement of the United Kingdom. This is an official position with an official report to the United Kingdom, but it remains unanswered. Scandals. Similarly, with the Swedish government. The Swedish government answered Mr. Melzer's, or the United Nations Rapporteur on Torture's letter, and Mr. Melzer wrote back with 50 due process violations that the Swedish prosecuting authority had committed in this persecution. It's just endless. It's just like, when do you think it's going to stop? And then there's another one and another one. The court cases themselves seem interminable. Julian's next hearing, the results of Julian's application for an appeal hearing will be within the next 6 weeks. So that will determine whether Julian can take an appeal over the substantive issues in the first decision of Judge Baritza. If I could describe that decision, Judge Baritza found in Julian's favour on medical grounds. Nils Melzer, he's a professor of law at Glasgow University, said that the technique that was used by the Crown Prosecuting Service and Judge Baritza to make such a judgment was brilliant, inasmuch as it opened an avenue for the United States to pursue an appeal and thus abrogating all of the previous evidence and only landing on whether Julian was psychologically well enough to be extradited. It's a bloody scandal.
Wow. We also understand that in the Ecuadorian Embassy, through the Spanish security company UC Global, the US intelligence services were able to spy on Julian, being privy to conversations that he was having with his legal team, thus gaining an understanding of legal strategy. I mean, in any functioning legal system, this would instantly throw out the case. How did it, make you feel as a father, as a grandfather to Julian and Stella's children, to hear some of the activities of UC Global in that period in the Ecuadorian Embassy?
It's just really striking the length that the CIA and the MI5 will conspire to go to break laws, to abrogate decency, to haul themselves up in front of us as liars, thieves, the disgrace of betrayal, bribery, corruption. They even contemplated murdering Julian and kidnapping him. You know, coming to the United Kingdom Extradition Court in Westminster with such bad faith and such dirty hands. Another example is that the FBI, and these are prime, these are not secondary examples, they're all prime. And another example is Thordarson. Thordarson testified that Julian wanted to break into a computer. Thordarson is an Icelandic citizen, okay? Under sleight of hand, the FBI got derogatory permission to go to Iceland. 9 FBI officers went to Iceland and offered Thordarson freedom from prosecution should he testify against Julian. Okay, first up, Thordarson is a convicted paedophile and a convicted fraudster. Second up, Thordarson is a Icelandic citizen being given immunity from prosecution by the FBI. It's not possible. There's nothing wrong in the United States. He's committed crime in Iceland. Okay, next. This is number 3. Julian Assange is an Australian citizen accused in a UK court accused by the United States in a UK court of wishing to break into a computer. Fuck's sake, man. There's no jurisdiction in any of those cases. The UK should have just said, oh, goodbye, this is ridiculous. However, they accepted the charges brought by the United States. It's impossible. It's just not possible, for the United States to bring a charge on the basis of a convicted fraudster, paedophile, Icelandic citizen, Australian citizen in the UK court to extradite to the United States. It just frustrates the life out of you to think. Another thing, if I could add, is that London is a financial centre and writes $1 trillion in contracts yearly. Often those contracts fall into dispute. Those disputes must be adjudicated by a balanced and fair judiciary. But this demonstrates that there isn't such a thing. So these magistrates or judges, if you wish to call them, these judges place the efficacy of the United Kingdom's legal administration at risk, at clear risk, in order to favour the United States. I'll add one more thing. The Nuremberg codes clearly state that if you committed the crime, then you're the criminal. So in this case, the United Kingdom tries to blame the United States and say we are proxy for the United States' intention. But they are the ones who have Julian Assange in the maximum security prison. They are the ones keeping Julian Assange incommunicado. They are the ones in the Crown Prosecuting Service committing conspiracies to keep Julian in the prison, which is documented, by the way, by their documents, not ours. They are the ones, the MI5 conspiring with the CIA to spy on Julian Assange and kidnap Julian Assange out of the embassy. All of these are crimes. Surely somebody recognises that this just simply brings disgrace to the administration of law and to the government of the United Kingdom.
Of course, when this was revealed through the Yahoo investigation by brave whistleblowers within the CIA, when it was covered, the only branch of the BBC that actually reported this was BBC Somalia. None of the other branches, from BBC Arabic, which millions of people watch, to BBC World Service, to any of the other branches, felt it was worthy of note that there were discussions at a top level between the British and the Americans about if a shootout were to take place, the British would do the shooting against these hypothetical mirage-like Russian figures. And yet it was without comment. And by many of the journalists, Carol Cadwalader among them, who have echoed lies that were passed to them by the intelligence services about Julian across this period. None of them even commented on this key issue. And post-Brexit, where conversations seemingly were about sovereignty, Britain is estimated to have 105 US bases in this country of some sort. This is Oxford University scholars' estimations in the 1990s. What scale is it at now, especially as the United States has, within the last few months, spent $3 billion on expanding its intelligence and military operations in this country? None of these people seemed it was worthy of comment. What do you have to say to those who see life, and particularly Julian's life, as this cheap?
There's two good answers to that. I mean, a general answer in Australia would be that these people couldn't lie straight in bed. But the other answer is that the disgraceful sight of people climbing to the next level of success over Julian Assange's corpse, who they know because they're involved, like Cadwalader, they're involved, whom they know has not committed a crime. And they equally know, that The Guardian and the New York Times and Der Spiegel published exactly the same information for which Julian Assange is charged. They know it because they're involved day to day. But despite that, somebody offers them another ring up the ladder or another run up the ladder on climbing on the corpse of Julian Assange, and with delighted glee, they climb one step higher and think that they're getting closer to something when actually they're descending into the abyss.
Absolutely. And, John, you're perfectly welcome to not answer this question, but as a grandfather, how did it make you feel to see reports that the security company at the Ecuadorian Embassy were testing nappies of your grandchildren to test the paternity of Julian? This is an absolutely grave violation of people's human rights. Do you have any comment on that?
Well, I'm sort of overworking the adjectives a little in this conversation. For the most part, I take no notice of these people except to describe the actuality as I've done. But it's grotesque, actually. And to think that these men take the instructions of these mini icons that sit around their offices in Whitehall, in MI5, in MI6 and the CIA. They take these instructions and they carry them out. They don't even get more money for it. I mean, they just accept the instructions as a pipeline of continuity which attaches them to the security of power. And, the weakness that the human beings that are involved in security display these days after the white helmets, after the destruction of Iraq, the destruction of Afghanistan and the destruction of Libya, and the quality of character that these institutions attract is seemingly attached to the lower level of hell. And I feel very sorry for them personally. That they have so little substance that they'll write out another order of torment of Julian Assange or somebody else, but in this case, Julian Assange. And then another officer will enact that torment, neither of them realising what they have done to either Julian or themselves or the institutions that they work within or the character and reputation of the United Kingdom. And it's really pitiful as to see in one generation the United Kingdom go from a second-tier power with global responsibilities to a third-tier power that we'll do anything. If you hire us, in case of the United States, we'll do anything. We're just for hire. The imagery is of Ramora fish swimming below the jaws of a shark, hoping to pick up a few morsels of torn flesh. That is the imagery I use. I'm sorry I'm overworking the metaphors and the adjectives, but the matter seems to, just thinking upon the matter, seems to call those spirits forth. And they need air, the spirits of justice, the spirits of speaking truth, the spirits of actual description of these events, call for air, call for revelation. And to witness the truth is in itself to elevate your status spiritually. Yes.
Absolutely, John. And, we know that several years ago, CIA agent Ansa Koulas killed 19-year-old Harry Dunn on British soil. There is, of course, still no extradition of Ansa Koulas, and the question of whether the intention even genuinely exists within the British government is certainly valid when you take into account that the British Foreign Office's Director of Protocol, Neil Holland, actually helped Ansa Koulas escape the country, texting that she should be on the next flight out just a day or so after the killing of Harry Dunn. Of course, during the Trump administration, the long-suffering family of Harry Dunn went to the White House to meet Donald Trump, and he all of a sudden sprung on them that the killer of their son, Ansa Koulas, was next door and wanted to meet them in a really terrible act of just so many levels that is disrespectful. Do you, John, in your position, have a message to the family of Harry Dunn? And what do you see as the kind of crossovers between the case of Julian Assange and Harry Dunn? What kind of hypocrisies, what kind of imbalanced power relationship do these cases reveal when taken together?
Well, I extend my warmth and sympathies to Harry's mum and dad. In the situation that you described, the facilitation of Ansa Koulas's dash from justice here, and the facilitation by the White House of trying to arrange a meeting to take the political steam out of this murder of the Harry Dunn. Well, I shouldn't say the death of Harry Dunn is nauseating. I mean, can you imagine if it happened to you, the panic that would be in your soul as somebody was trying to introduce you to the killer of your son in order to fix up a political matter rather than a matter of law or justice? I mean, it's pretty rich. that and drawing together the two strands, it would seem that the United Kingdom has lost its way, and as a consequence of losing its way, the centrifugal forces in the United Kingdom are increasing, and the activity of MI5 in order to reduce those centrifugal forces by fitting up Alex Salmond in Scotland or fitting up Craig Murray in Scotland, rather than fixing or attending to what is causing the centrifugal forces that are destroying the United Kingdom. Surely the people in Whitehall who are full of, brainy people with PhDs in this, that, and the other, surely they can see that pursuing a path which causes centrifugal forces, causes Scotland and Wales to want to leave, causes Birmingham, Manchester, Newcastle, Glasgow, Edinburgh to detest London, causes... Anyway, I've gone far enough on that, but surely they see that they must address these matters in a different way. Otherwise, the centrifugal forces will increase. And one last item, I did read yesterday some graphs on the real economy being the foundation of industrial nations. And that is the production of steel, iron ore, energy, and aluminium and copper. Now, with that as the foundation of economy, the United Kingdom is like 24th in the world and only achieves its current status if you use GDP and allocate into GDP the FIRE economy, finance, insurance, and real estate, all things which do not give strength or underlie a modern industrial economy. They sit on their derivatives of an economy. All they have here are derivatives in life. They don't make anything in it. Well, I just a slight correction. They do make guns, the BAE. They do make guns and they sell them to Yemen, to Saudi Arabia, so that the war there can continue.
Absolutely.
Well, that bloodlust is staggering.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was the key result of neoliberalism in Britain was deindustrialization and the sort of addiction to what they call fictional capital. And this is how our system essentially functions. And this is one of the things actually that Julian also did a lot to expose, was the way this outsourcing of functions of what previously were the role of intelligence services within states. So it was the private military intelligence industrial complex. And in fact, his description of what the function of the war in Afghanistan was washing money out of the tax basin of Britain and the United States and putting it into this untaxable, unaccountable space by throwing this. Something like huge figures were spent, on dropping 46 bombs on average per day over 20 years, which is what the war on terror entailed. Huge expenditure and redirection and redistribution of funds to these unaccountable forces. When thinking about that, what was the feeling that you had when you first saw the collateral murder video? As a father myself, as someone who also has family who worry about me when I take certain steps politically or I reveal certain things, you must have been quite worried for your son at that point, I imagine.
No, not at that point, but a little while later, sometime after that, I had lunch with an ex-police commissioner of a important European state. And he said to me that the minute Julian got off the plane into Sweden, there were four secret agencies following him, four of them. So at that stage, I became aware that these people were building up to a determination to stop the continuity of Julian and Wikileaks. Yeah. That was my sensibility at the time. These people will, after that warning, these people will do something. I didn't know what, but they will do something. Yeah.
We really, it's also something that feels to some extent that the family has been pushed reluctantly against your will into having to campaign not only for Julian, but for the rest of us. Julian, in the situation he's in now, is suffering for the rights of millions of people around the world. Do you have a message to the people that Julian is suffering for today?
It's two things. It's a matter of honour, as the French say, that somebody who makes these tremendous gifts available to you. There's 250,000 cables. You can look up your local politicians. Those 250,000 cables, every single one of them will benefit somebody. Sometimes the benefits will stop wars. I'll give you a quick example. Is that in 2008, a group of American soldiers outside Baghdad broke into a house and murdered the mum and the dad and the babies and the boys and girls in the entire family, the grandfather and grandmother and so on. Contemplating this crime, they called in an airstrike and obliterated from the earth all trace of that little family. Now, this was written up in one of the cables by the United States ambassador and sent to the Department of Justice. Upon the release of that cable, it was read by Iraqi parliamentarians, Iraqi people, and Iraqi bureaucrats. Iraq at that stage, how do we describe what had happened to Iraq? 26 of its 28 water purification plants had been destroyed. That means, practically, that a mum has to face the terror that when she gives her little child a drink of water, the child may get dysentery and shit itself to death. Can you imagine? Equally reveals in the Iraq war cables, Iraq war logs, rather. That is 400,000 logs. The interior description of a war equally reveals that they use DU. DU explodes into the depleted uranium munitions, explodes into the finest powder, which is carried on in the desert winds onto the food chain, and therein is eaten by expecting mums. You imagine what happens. Babies born so that you have to love them, if you know what I mean by that. That destroyed nation, deliberately destroyed. There's no rebuilding in it. That was all horse bucky. Deliberately destroyed. Somehow, after reading that cable, gathered together the strength to declare to the Americans that the status of forces agreement, which means that a status of forces agreement means that the occupying forces will be outside the rule of the law of Iraq. They refused to sign it. As a consequence, American forces, the Allies forces, NATO forces, whatever name you want to call them, had to be withdrawn. A cable, one cable, brought about the end of a war and the beginning, a slow process in a destroyed nation, a beginning of peace. So important. So important. So that's the gift of honour that we must attend to in the case of Julian Assange. There are 250,000 of those cables, and each of them bring benefits somewhere in the world. Some of the examples are humorous, like Rafael Correa, when he became president of Ecuador. He read one of the cables which went to describe how the United States Embassy paid the salaries of the elite police force. As a consequence, they were loyal to the embassy. Raphael thought about this for the moment and thought, well, what's an elegant solution to this problem? He raised the salaries to that level of all other policemen in Iraq, and consequently was able to govern with peacefully. Yes. So some of them are amusing and clever. Another one is the disposition scandals. The disposition, well, some people use the genocide, the dispossession of the Chagos Islanders were all packed up by the United Kingdom and dumped in Mauritius. That was recorded in the cables. When the cables were read, the Chagos Islanders were able to bring a case with their lawyers. What happened?
I'm still here. So sorry. I'm just putting out the light. Please carry on.
The Chagos Islanders were able to bring a case with to the International Court of Justice and prevail on the basis of the evidence in the case. So, as we can see, there are many people who actively want to give honourable or gifts based on honour to Julian Assange. Just a last comment, last one, is that there is only one road to freedom, and that is knowledge. It can be the knowledge of yourself. It can be the knowledge gained by using the tools of Wikileaks or other avenues, but there's only one road, and that is through knowledge. It can also be the knowledge that one gets through religious contemplation, but there's only one road, and that's knowledge. And Wikileaks have provided that knowledge if you want to have some understanding of geopolitical and personal freedom within contemporary states.
Fantastic. Thank you, John. The light has gone off, but that's not a problem.
Oh, that's okay.
Just the last point I wanted to make actually was, off the back of Vietnam and what was a traumatic experience for the US military establishment, they drew the conclusion that the ability to control information coming out of war zones was the key reason that they lost, which of course is rubbish. But off the back of that, you had the British in the Falklands literally letting in two British journalists who had to be embedded with the army. And as Judith Butler said, it illustrated the orchestrative power of the state to ratify what will be called reality, the extent of what is perceived to exist. And it is these things that Donald Rumsfeld called the unknown unknowns that Julian has done so much and has sacrificed so much to show the rest of us. And just to wrap up, I'd like to read a very short extract from The Music of Human Flesh, which is a poem by Mahmoud Darwish, where he said, "Oh, you with bloodshot eyes and bloody hands, night is short-lived. The detention room lasts not forever, nor yet the links of chains." And John, thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you on Sunday. I hope that everyone watching this will come and see Ithaca when it comes to a cinema screen near you. We are with you to the end, John, and anything you need, we are at your service 24/7.
Okay, can I just sign off with an addition to Darwish? This one by Byron, and it was written while he fought alongside the Greeks for Greek independence. It's yet, freedom yet, our flag torn but flying like a thunderstorm before the wind.
Beautiful. I have a feeling we have a lot of poetry to exchange on other occasions. Thank you so much, John. I really, really appreciate your time, and I hope you have a great day, and we'll speak more soon.
Thanks. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.